To a lot of people on the right, the term progress or progressive or anything like that is a dirty term. It represents everything that's wrong with society. The term progress means the social revolution, it means mass immigration, it means the breaking down of the traditional family, it means restrictions on traditional freedoms. Basically, anything bad can be seen as a form of progress or progressive. But I would argue that at its core, the term progress just means that you're moving towards a particular location. And so I think the question shouldn't very much be, do we progress or not, but where do we progress to? I think if you base your position as just being a negation, as just being against things, without really being for things or offering an alternative, or being willing to consider new ideas or come up with solutions or come up with your own version of something, you're just on a natural disadvantage and you're seen as Dr. No, or you're seen as obstructionist. Now, to be fair, I find this a lot more common with more mainstream political parties on the right. A lot of conservative parties, I think, are very guilty of this, wherein they don't necessarily propose solutions, or the solutions they propose are not very interesting or innovative. It'll just be very generic stuff like tax cuts, maybe. But I think that they need to spice it up a bit to try to come up with some kind of newer ideas. Because when you have the left who's like, okay, we're going to try to improve healthcare this way, we're going to try to clean up the environment, we're going to fund medical research, or whatever, even if it's nonsensical, I think you're at a thematic and linguistic disadvantage if your response to that is no, we're not going to do that. I think you need to propose an alternative, something that is more in line with our value set, and more importantly, that is properly articulated. And I don't mean this just in the context of more government involvement with the economy or passing more laws about something. Decentralization is good in a lot of cases, but I think if we're going to be saying we want decentralization, we want individual freedom, we have to focus more on why that's a positive, how that works better, rather than just, and I see this a lot with the recent American election, yelling about socialism and communism, and they want to take your kids away and all that kind of stuff. And that is all true to a certain extent, but all that's really saying is the other people suck, you should vote for us. It's not presenting a vision for how you want your country to be or how your society be. People naturally look towards the future. They want to believe that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And when we get into a lot of, particularly if you go in more in kind of a traditionalist direction with the idea that there's a decay in society, that things are going to keep getting worse, that strong men create good times create weak men, and kind of this metaphysical defeatism, I think that's a hard sell to a lot of people. I think people don't want just the doom and gloom. They want something they can believe in, something that they can feel that they're working towards. And as I said, I think this type of thinking just kind of goes into all kinds of different areas, particularly when it comes to, like I said, more normal politics. An issue I've had with conservative parties for a long time, at least within English-speaking countries, is the general unwillingness to campaign in cities. Cities are, to a certain extent, correctly viewed as a lost cause, that they're never going to be able to win cities, they're never going to be able to win seats in deep urban areas. And so the approach that a lot of conservative parties have is we're just going to try to get enough vote in the rural areas or the suburbs to just squeak by. There's not necessarily an attempt to offer anything to an urban audience. Often there's not even really an attempt to offer much to young people, to people who have concerns about the environment, about health, about labor laws, about all those kind of things. And I think there's an unwillingness to accept that not everybody's going to live in a rural or suburban setting, that there are a lot of people who are urbanites who may even be sympathetic towards a lot of right-wing ideas, but they just exist in a fundamentally different context. And they need to be approached as such. Now, part of this is just the way the electoral system works in a lot of English-speaking countries, where you have first past the post, and unless you win a plurality of votes in a particular district, you aren't going to pick up any seats. And in urban areas, that's just probably not going to happen anytime in the next couple of decades. It does, however, matter quite a bit, and I think this could really help out in presidential and governor and any kind of statewide election where it's based on the total vote percentage across the state. I think the problem is that they don't campaign enough in cities. They don't try to run up the margins at least a bit. Maybe it'll only go from like 5% voting conservative or Republican to 15%. But that's still a big change, not just a political change, but it also, I think, affects the culture of the area. And cities are the areas that create culture. And once again, this is, I think, another general issue we have, that we kind of abandoned a lot of the institutions, a lot of the mainstream culture, cities, things like that. And I think there needs to be an attempt to influence those, not just build your own parallel institutions, which may work or may not work, but try to make a little bit of progress, even if it's a small amount within some of these. Maybe you'll never get Hollywood to be conservative, but maybe you can get it 10-20% conservative. Maybe you can get the civil service to be 20-30% right-leaning. I don't think it's things that we've really tried or even are willing to look into. And I think it's a mistake. A new idea might be we need to try to get more right-leaning people to go into the civil service, to go into the entertainment industry, to go into areas that people on the right just have largely ignored, and try to get some sort of influence inside. Once again, it may only be 10-20%, but there will actually be some sort of counting force within that institution, and it'll not be nearly as monolithic as it used to be. Now, what made me kind of think about this, and I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I've done videos on illiberal progressivism before, but specifically what prompted this is RFK endorsing Donald Trump. Now, as part of the kind of agreement as it appears, RFK is endorsing Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has made a number of promises to him. They're going to have a commission to look into past assassinations of presidents. There's going to be some different types of government openness that are going to come out of this. And there's going to be a national commission to look into the health of Americans. And I don't recall anybody, like any conservative, any Republican, anybody really talking about that, at least in political circles. And I really like that because it's a new idea. It's saying there is this problem. We're going to try to come up with our own solutions to it. We're not going to just cede the initiative to the left. We're not just going to say, no, I can just put whatever in my body I want. Companies can do whatever. We're going to take a look into this. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to come up with our own solution. We're not going to let the course of history be dictated to us by the left. And once again, I get that RFK is a liberal, but you get my point. My point is Trump is actually going to be looking at this. We have Make America Healthy Again. Now, is any of this going to happen? Maybe or maybe not. But I think it's important that you start to have a conversation about this, about right-wing environmental policies, right-wing health policies, banking and industrial ideas. They don't necessarily have to be like a meme or something from an obscure internet philosopher, but I think that we need to offer something that is distinct, that is different, that does represent a different fundamental worldview and value set than the left, rather than just always going, we're against this, we're against that, no, that's bad. I think the Republicans, one of their single biggest problems is that they don't have a healthcare plan. Healthcare is, for a lot of people, the most important issue. It's the third rail in Canada. You can't touch the public healthcare system. Even if you're a conservative, it's just something that's off the table. Any talk of privatization or anything like that is just something that can't even really be talked about. But in the U.S., what is the Republican healthcare plan? I don't know. It's some privatization. We've got to repeal Obamacare. We've got to repeal and replace Obamacare, but with what? There's not a plan. There's not a alternative that's really presented, at least not in any consistent or coherent manner. And if you're somebody who has a health issue, you might be conservative on social issues, you might, generally speaking, be free market, but you have a health issue or your parent has a health issue and you don't want to be in debt for the rest of your natural life because of medical bills, so you might vote Democrat just based on that alone. So I don't know what the solution to it is, but they have to come up with something and they have to be able to sell it as part of a bigger vision, as part of a big idea. And some of this might even revolve around us getting out of our comfort zone. I think the idea of tax breaks for married couples and people with children and stuff like that is very popular, but what about people who don't have children or who aren't married? I mean, I guess we can say they have to pay additional taxes or something like that, but past a certain point, there are some people who are willing to do that, but a lot of people want something in it for them. I know back when I was unemployed and I didn't have much income, a lot of the conservative policies were like, we're going to offer tax breaks to people who go and get more education, or who are unemployed, or we're going to reduce whatever. And it's like it's not helpful to someone who isn't really making money and isn't really paying taxes to begin with. And saying you're going to reduce taxes on Canadians but only doing it for families, it's just not helpful to a lot of people. Now, how are we going to deal with that exactly? Once again, I don't know. I just think that these are conversations people have to be having. You can't just rely on the same group of people in rural areas to continuously vote for you and just kind of throw them a bone that's only in their interest. You need a broader social vision that goes beyond just bribing your base. Another moment that I think was really good during this campaign is when they got the head of the Teamsters Union to speak at the RNC. Now, a lot of people didn't like him. He had a very left-wing economic message. People were saying he's a socialist, he's a communist, stuff like that. But it's a new idea. Getting organized labor to come to the Republican National Convention. I can't recall that happening before. I'm sure it has. But that is reaching out. That's trying to do something a little bit different. You don't have to do anything that he says, but you might as well listen to him, try and have a bit of a dialogue with organized labor, and maybe there are areas that we can agree upon. Maybe we can have right-wing labor policies. Once again, it's not even necessarily if it's successful or not. But if you can insert that bit of doubt, if you can get unions at least willing to talk to conservatives, at least willing to try to deal with them and do business with them, I think that would be a big advantage. And I don't really see what harm it did to just have him come and talk to him. I mean, it seems to have helped out quite a bit. The fact that the DNC banned that guy from talking, I think is really bad optics, and I think that was a big win. A lot of people are like, no, we can't support the unions, we can't be aligned with unions. Talking to them, trying to come to positions that we agree upon, and trying to come up with ways to address the concerns that the average person or the average worker has. I think it's also important to just try to differentiate between things that are of fundamental importance and things that are of secondary importance. There are certain issues that are fundamental, there are certain issues that can never be compromised on, that can never be changed, but a lot of stuff when it comes to policy or implementation or messaging or things like that, I think are things that we can take another look at. A quote that I always really like is, I was reading a book about Huey Long, and it referred to him as being the first Southern politician to have an original idea since the Civil War. He was the first Southern politician to talk about something other than blacks. And that was a great success. He didn't just make his campaign over we're going to keep segregation, we're going to keep crime rates down, we're going to keep the races separate. He actually had a vision. Free textbooks, building roads, building other public infrastructure, and he won really big as a result of it. I am starting to see some baby steps towards this in the Trump campaign and in some other right-wing political movements throughout the West, but I think it's something we need to focus on and something we need to improve upon. At least have a presence in urban areas, a presence in the institutions, even if it's never going to be a dominant one. Listen to other groups, come up with new ideas, things like that. Ultimately, we need to have a goal of where we're going to. And everything needs to fit within a framework to do that. It can't just be this patchwork mixture of no here, no there. Oh, this is going to be good for this particular subset of the base. I think we need to be more consistent. I think we need to be more ambitious and more creative. So that's my thoughts on the matter. I'm sorry if that was incoherent stream of consciousness, but I had a bunch of different things I wanted to talk about, and I think I covered most of them. Anyways, everybody, God bless. Have a beautiful Sunday, and I'll talk to you all real soon.